with me today our guest, Lauren Brunson-Petras. Petrous like Tetris. I love that. She is a leadership consultant, conflict resolution expert, and founder of Boundless & Co., where she equips modern leaders with the clarity, confidence, and integrity needed to thrive in high-stakes environments. Her faith informs her leadership, her storytelling inspires her audiences, and her methodology empowers clients to confront challenges without losing their authenticity. She's a sought-after speaker, writer, and advisor for mission-driven leaders who want to make a meaningful impact in the world. So, ladies, let me welcome the one and the only Lauren. Girl, welcome to Power Talk.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I wish every intro was like this. Amazing. Thank you, Coach Sheree. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. Okay, so for women who don't know you, like just give us some background about where you're from, like the fun stuff, like what you love, and really like what got you into doing what it is you do today.
Yes. So, like, I always like to say, because a lot of people are like, that's such a mouthful of what you do. But, like, I'm like, always in a nutshell, what I do is I help women get clear on who they are, who God designed them to be, and how to lead with purpose and excellence that shifts rooms, teams, trajectories, and atmospheres. So, how I got into that is because I was everything that I just said. What I do now, I was everything that I didn't do before. So I was a girl raised by a single mom. We moved a lot of places. We were in and out of schools a lot. I was a California girl, so we moved up and down California. And I really thought at the time that like being small and kind of being just getting people to like me was the main reason, like my main goal. And I quickly learned, wait, that's making me fragmented and killing myself in the process. So anyways, through this whole evolution of moving up and down California, playing small in a lot of ways and trying to find myself with different groups of people, the Lord ended up having me move to Michigan because my mama got sick. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be here and help mama get healthy and then get the heck out of Michigan and go back to California, the Sunshine State. But the Lord had other plans and I met my now husband. And so now we call Detroit home. We've been here for 10 years and we have a golden doodle who's just like the cutest little thing. And I've been running Boundless & Co. now full time. I think it's about 6 years. Is it 6 or 7? Oh my gosh, just crazy what God has done. And here we are. We love to travel. We love to read. We love a good book. We love a movie and we love a latte.
Love a latte, a lot.
Latte a lot. Literally.
Love a latte a lot. Okay, so I know that a lot of women, they're like, okay, they feel stuck, they feel unfulfilled, because they've learned, okay, here we go. They've learned to suppress their truth. I hate to use the word their truth, but they've learned to suppress the truth in order to like keep the peace. So what they end up doing is they end up engaging in these conflict avoidant patterns. So why do you think most women, and I really want to kind of call out Christian women, begin to engage in these conflict avoidant patterns? What are your thoughts?
I think that there's such a layeredness to this. And I work with women and executives all the time on this topic, both within the church and without. And I would say, first and foremost, we need to understand that our upbringing in many ways did not help support us to be able to have hard conversations well. So specifically for women, we are taught to kind of keep the peace, take care of your younger siblings, don't rock the boat. A lot of us got parentified at a young age. So we just learned to be the parent in the room, which ultimately meant keep our parents happy and kind of be this manager. So I feel like we have a generation of women who grew up by the time they were 12 to be a manager, meaning I don't know how to actually create resolution and change and healthy conversation. I just know how to manage both sides, what my sister and my mom are saying, or what my boss and my assistants are saying. And you have to manage everything. And so I think that our upbringing created a generation of managers. Then you add with it, I feel like the capital C church in many ways doesn't know how to have accountability or hard conversations well. This is an area that we desperately need to learn. So I became a believer when I was 6 years old. I've walked with God my whole life. He is my savior, the love of my life. But I think the thing that we forget in the church is that Jesus came to confront. He confronted death. He confronted the cross. He confronted lies. He confronted our sin. He confronted self-righteousness. So, but we call him the Prince of Peace. We call him the Prince of Peace, but he's the ultimate confronter. So I think that we as the church have to get better at identifying what does peace, healthy peace, holy peace actually look like. And that type of peace always requires confrontation. And I say all that to say, I think a lot of it is a lack of equipping. So women feel that if there's tension, I've done something bad. If someone's mad or an outcome goes poorly, something is wrong. And so we take on a hyper responsibility and we take on things that should have never been ours to hold in the first place. But that goes back to our management, right? That we were taught. And so we just sit here and try to manage and just manage feelings. Then we suppress our own voice, like you were saying earlier, because at the end of the day, again, we were taught we got to be there for the boss and the team. We got to be there for the board and the people that we're, serving. We got to be there for my sibling who's mad at my mom, but mom, I get this. And so there's just this teeter-tottering that we lose our sense of self in, but we haven't been able to step into freedom because one, I don't think we have known that God has the door for our freedom open all along. We just need to be equipped. And that's why conversations like this are so important, that if women were taught confrontation, when done well, is needed for authentic peace to occur. So if women took the time and gained the investment into gaining the skill sets needed to have confrontation well, to have hard conversations well, they will gain with them a confidence and groundedness so that they're not so fragile. One, meaning like, oh, tension's in the room, so I can't hold on to this. That's what a lot of women say. I can't handle tension in the room. I can't. And it's like, actually, yes, you can. It's just going to make you uncomfortable because it goes against everything that makes you comfortable. But that doesn't mean it's bad. So there's also this tension, and I'm pulling out things left and right. I'm just, I answered your question. It's a big answer. Yeah. But we too often associate comfort with peace. We think that our comfort is peace, and it's not. Peace, God, when he is in the room, he will be like, hey, I've given you peace, but there are so many times when God's told me to do something and I have peace about it, but I am hugely uncomfortable. But in the church, often, I think we think, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. And then it's kind of, I think, our way of cutting corners, if we're being honest with ourselves a bit, of like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing that, so it must not be what God would want for me, or it must not be, what's going on. Because if there's tension in the room, that must be bad. So we have a lot of redefining we need to do. We have a lot of equipping we need to do. We have a lot of jail cells that I think that we've, as women, think that we are locked in, but the door's been open. And we just need someone to be like, baby girl, that door's open. And it's just time for you to walk out. And it's going to be terrifying because a lot of us pray for freedom, but the comfort of the jail cell is where we actually stay.
Girl, you just laid down so much great information. Like, let me just kind of highlight what you said. I love what you said about tension, because women have become so programmed to manage tension. And it starts when we're younger. It starts with the fragmentation of yourself. So basically what you're saying is like, hey, this is like programming. So you learn how to manage everybody else's issues instead of your own.
Yes. Yes.
And then you talked about this whole concept of tension in the room. And I've noticed a lot of women, like what you said was fire sauce. It's like, I can't deal with the tension in the room, but I'll deal with the tension within myself.
Yeah, but they sacrifice. Exactly. And the thing that makes me so sad for women, and I do executive coaching a lot. One of the first things we do in the sessions is they come in, they're like, Lauren, I want to have more confidence at the table and I want to be able to handle conflict better. And so give me the framework. And they look for this formulaic framework to somehow, get them to where they want to go. Well, I end up asking really deep questions. There's not a single session where the first or second one I've done, someone isn't crying. And these are strong, powerful women, but it's because what I'm doing is I'm forcing them to sit in questions that they've buried and pain that they've buried and things in their voice and their thoughts and their ideas that they've suppressed and numbed and in many ways become apathetic because they believe that their number one goal is to manage. They believe that their worth is synonymous with how much they sacrifice. And that we already had a savior and he died on that cross. And I think if more women spent more time focusing on who did God create me to be? He knit me together in my mother's womb. I am uniquely and wonderfully made. How did he make me unique? And spend time identifying what is her voice? What does her voice sound like? What is she passionate about? What is she interested in? And if we stepped into that work of identifying our own self as God created us and designed us to be, and then gained the emotional maturity and the skill sets that happen over time and hard work, and to your point, all that rewiring is a lot of healing. There's a lot of open wounds. We are the walking wounded. And until we get a lot of those woundings taken care of, we aren't operating whole. But once we become whole, hard conversations don't knock us over anymore. Tension isn't the greatest fear in the room. It's living in misalignment. It's allowing artificial peace to occur in your board meetings instead of, so a lot of that takes so much inner work to get you into a space where you're like, I know myself. I know who God created me to be. And my conviction and my clarity and my true peace will be my compass, not other people's approval in the room, and not whether there's tension or not in the room.
Love what you're saying. And as I've worked with women too, just to your point, is that a lot of women, what I say is they're operating with a substitute self.
Well said.
They're
Yes.
operating with a self that pleases other people, but it keeps them stuck. So when we think about women who are like, I feel stuck, do you think, because I know that women are listening and are like, well, yeah, Lauren, but it's easy for you. You're a conflict strategist, but I'm living like a real life and like you're superpower. Do you think that women are stuck because they can't move or won't move?
Well, first I'll say, with my own story, the reason I think I'm so passionate about this and why even like the Lord has blessed the conflict strategy and my coaching in general is because I've lived every ounce of what I'm saying, because I was terrified of conflict. So the majority of my life, I was the antithesis of everything I was saying. I let the metrics of people and whether there was tension in the room be my guide. And I fragmented my heart and my soul and my mind so much as a woman, because I allowed myself to be the key manager, the key rescuer, the key savior, the key hero. And in so doing, I lost so much of myself, Sheree, that I didn't even know who I was, what I liked, what I didn't like. And in so doing, I also allowed so many boundaries to be violated because I didn't even know what my convictions were. Because if my definition of success was only to appease others and approve and have other people approve me as my barometer for success, I had no idea what a boundary even was. I had no idea how to even be a disruptor, be a catalyst, have the hard conversations. And so I just say that to say that all of this that I have now become, God has, I think, used my absolute indeficiency set up to be the worst conflict strategist on the planet based on my upbringing. And he's done a whole work in me, because it's not like I read a book and came out of the other side. I've gone and got certifications. I've done the schooling, I've done the reading, but I've lived through it and did years of therapy and years of healing. And so I just say that to encourage the women listening that you are not too much. You are not enough. You are not like, oh, I fell on the wrong side of the tracks in this way, or I don't have that personality trait. That Maybelline commercial was like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. And it's like, no, women, no. I think that sometimes we can say that, oh, well, she must have come out of the womb just very confident, so it's easy for her. And it's like, I can't even begin to tell you how insecure, fragmented, scared I lived most of my life. And so the words I'm saying are very hard won and they're fought for, but it's a testament that it really does work. And so I say all that to say, in answer to your question about, do you think women stay stuck, or what would you say, stay stuck, or that they'd want to stay stuck?
Yeah, they can't move or they won't move.
I think that it's such a good question. I think that most women won't move because they think that moving is wrong. Or there's another group of women that think that. I think women think if I stay stuck, it's what I need to do, because again, we've made a lot of women make their worth synonymous with sacrifice. So they've already sacrificed their voice, they've already sacrificed their life and their personalities. And at the end of the day, I think they're just like, but at least these people are happy. At least my mom's happy. At least my boss is happy. The team's happy. And so we kind of have this sacrificial way of excusing why we stay stuck, because we think that we're doing it for the greater good. And that is not God's way. And I think the other half of women don't know that they want to move past being stuck, but are scared to pay the price of what growth requires. Because all of us all of us want to find our voice and to live in purpose and to have meaning and to live in alignment. That all sounds great. But when the reality of, are you willing to pay the cost of the judgment, of the exposure, of the actions required, of people's disapproval of you, of the unsteadiness, the lack of control you're going to feel in order to get to the other side that change requires? A lot of us are like, oh, wait, now that price is too high. And I'm like, yeah, it's a very, you should be scared. It's scary because it is a high price. But if you are willing to really want change and growth, you'll pay it. But many women they'll like the idea of it, and then they'll start, and then they're like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. Or like, shoot, people are judging me now, so I'm going to go back. And so that's when they stay back in that jail cell that I mentioned before, because it's more comfortable. So one is, we need to equip women that you are meant to grow, and you are supposed to grow, and that Jesus wants you to get unstuck, and that your worth is not determined by how much you sacrifice. It is God-given, and you are meant to flourish and grow. So it's definitely defining what success is. And the other is, honey, you got to get real about what price are you willing to pay for growth and for change. Instead of talking about ideals, like pay the price or don't. But a lot of us push food around our plate complaining that we're hungry, and then we become apathetic, and then we blame other people. And instead, it's like, actually spend some time in the mirror just owning what your actions and choices say is actually important to you. I said it. Shoot.
That I just like that, because it really comes down to accountability. And what you're talking about is a mindset and a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to practice making a decision to be uncomfortable and
Yes.
doing it for your own peace. And really, comfort is not peace.
Exactly.
Comfort is comfort. And I tell women that women who are comfort, they rarely walk out their calling.
100%. I mean, you look at anyone in the Bible, God used the craziest people. Like there's so many, like you've heard about this. You're like, if I got this person's resume, if I got David's resume, if I got, Paul's resume, you'd be like, reject. But like, he uses the most incompetent, flawed people ever. And so if we can get over ourselves a bit by being like, he uses the most craziest people to do his work. And if but every single person he did choose, not a single one of them lived a comfortable life. And so I think this is also part of calling that we have to get really real about too. It's like when we go to the women's conference and we're like pumped and like, yes, you're called. And we're like, yeah, we're raising our hands and, we're at church and we believe that's all great. But I think when the rubber meets the road, Monday through Saturday, are you living a called life? Like, are you living in alignment with what you believe God has told you and what you believe that you are called to do? And a lot of us are like, well, maybe like here and there, and we cherry pick situations because we're still choosing, again, that comfort. And then we're blaming kind of like God and not opening opportunities. But it's like, well, did you go talk to the person across the room that you were nudged to go talk to? Like, God works and watches in the little bold things that he asks of us. And if we don't follow through on those small discomforts, he's not going to give you greater calling.
That's so good. And I think that the price of trying to keep peace is too much to pay. When it all comes down to it, I'm not like, Jesus didn't call us to be peacekeepers. Like I need to be keeping peace for this person. Because sometimes women will say, I'm just keeping peace. And I'm like, are you really keeping peace? Because you don't seem like you're in peace to me. But anyway, but really women want, okay. So I know that there are these different personality types that you talk about, the tortoise and the porcupine. And I always say that you cannot, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But the first thing you need to do is you've got to understand the state of your mind. So some women, they don't even know where they're at. Like, how do I begin setting boundaries? So can you explain the difference between that tortoise personality and the porcupine personality?
Yeah, it's such an elementary illustration that I came up with, but like, I just think it really helps simplify a lot. So all of us grew up in environments. The first step is always thinking through what was my upbringing like? So some of us were in households where there was lots of screaming, lots of yelling, lots of confrontation, but done poorly. So we either became like them, which I kind of inherit to the porcupine. It means that we created a defense system where we're actually bigger than we are. So the porcupine has these quills that make him appear larger than he is, but it's a way to protect himself, right? So we get big, we get loud, we get intimidating, we get, oh, I don't care. And if you come for me, and we get like this bigness of self, but really it's to protect how scared and vulnerable we are. Then there's those of us who are like the tortoise, who maybe grew up in homes where maybe you did grow up in a loud, lots of loud, toxic home where there was lots of, yelling and whatnot, but you were like, oh, I will never be like that. And something made an agreement in you where you're like, I will never be like my parents. So then you go, now you're afraid to ever speak. So you go inward and you go into your shell. So you get smaller so that you self-protect. Or you grew up in a family where if you dared mention the elephant in the room, you were looked at as bad or naughty, or you're the one that ruined everything. So then you're like, oh my gosh, truth is bad. And if there's any tension, I got to go in again. So that's the turtle and the porcupine. And the reason it's important to identify that is, do you find yourself getting small or really big in order to, again, and the point is to self-protect. Both of these we do to self-protect. We don't engage in tension because we're honestly self-protecting. And the thing is that true, authentic peace is found, like we mentioned before, only through confrontation. So when you recognize, do I get small or do I get big? That's a huge key to first identify, what do you do? Where do you go? And sometimes, Sheree, it happens. So I have a lot of clients who are like, oh, I get really big when it comes to my boss. And I try and like act like I have it all together. And I pretend all these things. And like, if anyone comes at me, I'll poke them with a quill, but on the inside, I'm shaking in my boots. But when it comes to my dad, or when it comes to my, colleague, or when it comes to my friend, I'm like a turtle. So you also may change person to person, but it's also important to identify why. Why do you get big in front of your boss? What did your upbringing say is important to get big with someone like your boss or with someone like your friend? So again, these are just simplified illustrations to gain some sort of footing and clarity into what your upbringing was. And I really always encourage women, go do some work in therapy or with a coach, like to help identify why you perceive the world why do you perceive the world the way you do? And it's a lot of times because of your woundings and because of your upbringing. And you're kind of flying blind until you've done the work to identify why you react the way you react.
That's so good. Because I know that, like, me personally, I am more on the porcupine. Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, whatever that is you about to do, I mean, you're not gonna do that.
That's real.
Well,
And let me also give a caveat. There is a difference between all of us as women, and if we're leaders in some way, let's just call a spade a spade. There's times where I've been shaking in my boots, but like, you got to show up with confidence and competency. So there's a clear distinguisher between, I need to show up with more confidence that I may feel, and being a porcupine to self-protect. But yes.
there is that, and here's what I've noticed though. A lot of women, they go into, I'm going to use your words, turtle mode when it
Mhm.
comes to family. So they get caught up in the vortex of the family drama. So how do women, this is huge. I deal with it all the time. They're wondering, okay, great, Lauren, how do I then set boundaries with my family? Get this, when they don't agree.
Yeah, so good. And it's like sometimes my work, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like I often have to be like the bearer of tough news. I think first you need to dismantle the fairy tale that if you say the right sentence or the most eloquent speech, that you're going to get the results you want. It's just more often than not, that's not what happens. But I think also that guilt often shows up when you start living differently than people expect. And people and women can often feel like, oh, I feel guilt, therefore it's bad. And it's like, no, you're changing the tide. It's uncomfortable. And you have to let them be uncomfortable because you have to be so firmly rooted in why you're making the change. So again, when you decide to put up a boundary with your family, let's say you're done with how your mom speaks to you. Like, she's spoken to you in ways that are not appropriate. You have to get really clear on why. Why are you done? Because she's not going to be happy when you put that boundary up. And she's going to try and make you, more often than not, our families will guilt trip us, make us feel like we're wrong, make us feel like we're rebelling. Then, we care as women. We don't want to create this tension in the family. We don't want to feel disloyal to our family. So then we start to question. So it's why you have to be very firm in your conviction of the why. Get really crystal clear on why you need to put this boundary up. The why is what's going to hold you steady when the disappointment from your family comes, when the disapproval from your family comes, and your why needs to be stronger than that for you to actually keep a firm boundary. I will also say, if you're not ready to put up a boundary, now here's my distinction. none of us are going to feel fully ready to sit in the discomfort that change will require. But if you are so done living an old life that it's greater, that your desire for change is greater than the way you've lived previously, you have to be prepared that you are going to have everyone tell you that what you're doing is wrong, but your why still has to be greater. Your why has to be greater. And that's the thing that again, I can talk to you about, here's a couple ideas for boundaries that could work. But the problem with that, Sheree, is that I could say that to clients, but then let's say they do it, but then 3 days later when their family explodes at them, then they come back, back crying, and they're like, well, it didn't work. And it's like, no, what do you mean it didn't work? Well, they're mad at me. And it's like, well, honey, again, you can have the most beautiful speech on the planet. It doesn't mean that the outcome is going to equal the way you want it to, but that doesn't mean you were wrong. So you have to stand firmly in your why. And I really liken it to preparing our hearts to receive new seed so that it can get watered so that we can have a harvest, right? But we forget the plowing part. The plowing part of the soil of our heart, you have to get ready in your heart in order to carry new seed, and so it can flourish and grow. And what the plowing means is you got to figure out your whys. You got to be able to look in the mirror and figure out what your triggers are. You got to look in the mirror and figure out, okay, mom's been talking to me this way. Why am I done? And why am I done? Why do I deserve? Why am I worthy of a new way of living and interacting with my mother? And hands down, you are. You don't need someone's permission to tell you that is the case, but you need to be able to believe that for yourself. And until you do, you will just make agreements with them, and you will backslide on the boundary you said was important to you. Then they don't take you seriously, and it spirals out of control. So the biggest, most simplest thing, get really clear on your why. Get very clear on your why, because that's what's going to hold when all the disapproval comes.
Now let's talk about, I love what you said, get clear on your why. Like, why are you doing this? Start off with some intention, because some people just go out and they just announce their boundary. I'm no longer going to do this, but you haven't even decided on the why before you do the what. Here is what a lot of women deal with, and I call it nice girl syndrome.
Yes.
And it's pervasive within the Christian church, where I'm just I'm going to be nice. I think, this is just me, I think being nice is being manipulative, because you're saying yes when you really and truly want to say no. So you try to manage other people's responses instead of managing your internal world. It's a mismatch. So now, how do you speak to the Christian woman who's like, but I don't want to rock the boat. I'm just trying to be nice. And like, this is, Jesus said, like, we're supposed to have the fruit of the Spirit, which is peace, and everyone's not at peace. Like, how do you help her who's so uncomfortable with even using her voice?
Yeah, oh, it's so good. I love what you say. I often say that people who are focused on being nice, their real root intention or desire is to be liked. People who are focused on being kind are interested in clarity and respect for self and respect for others. So I can be kind and still say something that makes someone uncomfortable. And I actually firmly believe that kindness is clarity. So I would rather show love and show kindness to someone across from me that makes people uncomfortable. Shoot, it could make me uncomfortable, but I'm like, hey, this is hindering our relationship enough that I want to show kindness to you and respect to you and self-respect to me, to name, an issue I have in the room or something that's going on. Niceness, again, I feel it's like a bit of a mask. Being nice is like, oh, I'm smiling at you and resenting you on the inside, calling it respect, but really I'm just afraid to address anything with you. And like, that's not integrity. And so that's where just getting really real on what are your definitions of peace. If you think Jesus' definition of being a peacekeeper is to say mum's the word and just kind of let everything slide, and we don't want to rock the boat is God hates rocking the boat. Then it's like, you need to spend more time, just being straight. You need to go spend more time studying Jesus. That man rocked the boat in every way, and the world has never been the same. He said he came to bring peace, but he also said he came to bring the sword. And so unity is the goal, but true unity cannot happen until you confront what needs to be confronted. And true, authentic peace cannot be acquired unless you're willing to have the hard conversations that confrontation requires. So I think, again, it's this equipping of proper definitions and almost like forcing women to think about what they're thinking about. But think about what you believe. Think about what you just said. Do you really think that that's what Jesus is calling us to do? Some may say, yeah, great. Then a lot of it's like, let's talk about how maybe that's not the case. And let's dismantle some false narratives that's kept us stuck and emotionally unhealthy and backwards and has caused a lot of church hurt and a lot of damage and a lot of broken down teams instead of high performing teams. The church should have the highest performing teams on the planet, and we don't. And so, like, I believe that a huge reason for that is our inability to have hard conversations well. And there's this, in the capital C church and just in general, people will often say, like, give them grace. Someone on your team, we can't afford to pay them as much as we want, so we just keep letting things slide. Give them grace, give them grace. Give your husband grace, give your kids grace. And I think, yes, that's beautiful. But just like in our culture in general, I think there's an overcorrection because in previous generations, there's been a lot of shame, a lot of legalism, horrible, painful, harmful things that have happened through shame-induced narratives, and that's been horrible. But then there's been this overcorrection of let's just grace everyone and everything, and then we call it holy. And the disruptor in me is saying, is it actual grace or is it a mask for your avoidance? Is it actual grace or is it a mask for your fear, or is it a mask to cover that you actually don't know what to do? And so this God is the God of integrity. So he's always trying to get to our root understanding. What is your intention? What's really in the soil of your heart? What's really in your heart? And so we have to do that inner work back in our heart to identify, you know what? I keep giving this person grace and I keep acting like, oh, well, I'm just going to give them grace and I'm going to keep putting up with what they're putting up with because I'm going to give them grace. But on the inside, it's actually like maybe you're just terrified to confront them, or your to-do list is too big and you don't want to deal with it. It's more respectable to say, I don't know what to do, or I'm scared, or I'm just going to avoid this. Then use words like peace and grace, which are holy words, as masks to hide your own fears. Like that should freak us out. And that's what we're doing. And to me, the biggest tool that I help ministries and nonprofits and churches do is accountability. Hard conversations is accountability. You have shame on one extreme, and then you have grace on another. Again, grace is a beautiful thing, but sometimes in an effort for us not to feel shame, we go again, overcorrect into too much grace. But then there isn't a calling up or a calling higher. We need accountability for one another, and we need to call each other up and not be afraid to do so, because iron sharpens iron. And I love that verse in Colossians that says, may your conversations be soaked in grace and seasoned with salt. And we forget the salt, but it's a purifier and it adds substance, and we need it. We just need to also gain the skill sets to do it well.
Girl, I just love what you're saying. Just like all of the different concepts that you're bringing to the conversation about how, yes, God does give us grace and we have peace, but these are holy words, not a way to avoid what needs to be addressed. And I really think that grace is the empowerment of Jesus to do what he's called you to do. It's not a mask that you hide and back up. It's not something that you throw out on the table because you really don't want to address something. No, God has given us this grace to empower us to do that which we don't think we can do. And I love what you said about fear, because anytime you really do not address something, that is a spirit of fear. It really is. Like, we can say, I'm just trying to keep the peace. Like, don't lie, because you cannot transform a mind if you do not identify where it is. So you just said, I need help. Like, hey, number one, admit the fear. Admit that you are afraid. God can help people who admit. He can't help people who don't admit. Number two, you've got to learn how to use your sword. And if you don't know how to use your sword, then you need to get a skill set or a framework, a blueprint to wield that sword. So I want to be like super respectful of your time, but I am wondering, would you be willing to help women walk through your brave framework, even just for a minute, so that for the woman who's like, okay, well, I'm ready. I got my sword. How do I do it? So would you be willing to just quickly give us your brave framework?
Absolutely. So I just came up because you're doing all this inner work, but then there is like we need a tool set to help us navigate. And so much of what yeah, we're being required to do again requires courage. And again, courage is not the absence of fear; it's doing something while afraid. So God is calling us to always go higher, which is being courageous. So I developed the Brave framework, and each letter stands for a different step when preparing for a hard conversation with anyone, your mom, a colleague, a teammate, a friend, your boss. So, in a nutshell, and we can dive into this deeper at another time, but in a nutshell, the first letter is B, believe in something bigger than yourself. So, this is okay. Um, we had some tension, let's say in a meeting earlier, and I need to go back and confront someone in the room that was speaking to me in a way I didn't like. So I always tell my clients, you need to prepare first. Don't come in hot because then you're going to be reactive and not respond. So come in and prep. And the first thing you need to do is believe in something bigger than yourself. So ask like, okay, why does this bother me? What do I actually want in this relationship? What do I need to make sure that we both walk away with? So if you're both colleagues, then it's like, you know what? I actually don't like this person in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, we really believe in the mission. And the mission is important to both of us. And we may have differences of opinion on how to go about it, but we need to stay rooted to something bigger than ourselves, which is like, wow, we serve a mighty mission, and this person is going to partner with me in it. So, okay, this gives you a North Star. It gives you something of value that both of you can share that will be your equalizer. So you need to remember that as you head in. The next step is R, reframe the moment. So perspective determines posture. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? What is this revealing in me? Reframing allows you to sit and say, okay, is this actually something I need to address right now? Or am I just mad and triggered because they stepped into my own wounding? Is this a situation where if I don't address it, could this turn into actually resentment and issues down the road? And so you need to reframe the moment and zoom out, almost like you're looking at yourself at your desk and being like, okay, in 6 months from now, would this matter? And in many ways, especially in a working relationship, it does, because it's going to affect your guys' trust for one another. It's going to affect your ability to show up and partner. So reframe the moment. The next is A, acknowledge with curiosity. So now you're in the conversation. You're having the hard conversation with the colleague. You're in the middle of it. And what I always say is that you first need to start by showing curiosity and acknowledging what they're saying. Now, notice I didn't say agree. I didn't say agree with them, but something that we need to do better in society and culture and in the capital C church is have the emotional capacity to be curious about the other person's perspective. So sit there and ask questions. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. So acknowledging means naming what's real, understanding what maybe misunderstandings. Again, true leadership isn't about being right. It's about being honest. And in conflict, it's really important. Resolution isn't one walks away as the winner and one walks away as the loser. That's a huge myth, and we have to dismantle it. True conflict resolution is walking away, both people understanding one another in a different way, and there's some sort of resolution that follows. It is not a winner, and it's not about being right. So first come in with humility to acknowledge with curiosity. Then we go into the V, which is voice with clarity and confidence. So now you're in your position where you now need to speak with clarity on what you're upset by. How did they breach a boundary? How did they communicate with you that was not acceptable? And what do you need them to know moving forward so that it doesn't happen again? Again, we can sometimes, people either go one way or the other. Some people are the A's where they're like, oh, I'll just listen to them all day long, and then I don't want to share what I have to say, so then we just sweep it under the rug. Or then you have the people who are the V's who don't do enough listening and come in hot with what they need to say. You have to do both. So once you voice very clearly what you need in order to this not to happen again, the goal isn't to win the argument, it's to protect alignment. Then you end with E, which is engage with specificity and integrity. So this is where you walk away with some sort of closure. And this is a big step that so many people forget to do in the midst of a hard conversation. Let's take the example of the colleague again. What are you guys both agreeing to that you're not going to do anymore? Or what's the deadline you're going to agree to that the campaign's going to roll up by this time? Whatever it is, you both need to come into alignment about what will and will not continue, or what deadline or measurable will be met, so that you both know that you're honoring the other side. So you have to end and engage with integrity.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for running through that. So let me just, ladies, listen to what Lauren said. Believe, B, that stands for believe in something greater. Reframe the moment that you get that. You need to acknowledge what's happening in this situation, voice with clarity. I just love this point. And then engage with specificity. And you said it so well, Lauren. The goal is not to win. The goal, really, if we think about it, it's to understand. I love that. Understand and alignment and align with your own self. So, Lauren, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us here on Power Talks today. As we end, just tell the women, like, where can they meet you, find out more about you, and then maybe they are like, hey, like, our organization wants to work with you.
Oh, Sheree, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I keep telling you, we're birds of a feather, so it's just been such a joy to be with you. So you can find me on boundlessandco.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Lauren Brunson-Petras or Boundless & Co. on Instagram. I have discovery calls that I have 20-minute discovery calls where I'd love to just get to know you, get to know me, and we can see what kind of opportunities or right alignments for both of us, whether it's for coaching or for consulting. And I would just adore to meet you and connect with you.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. It has been another amazing Power Talks, and we will see you next time.